I was feeling better. I had a rough time of it after the death of my baby Marcus. I managed to find my way back to my routine. I was performing with different bands around the city. One evening I met this guy. I liked him. He looked like a cat, and his voice was really deep. His name was Ted. I wasn't seeing anyone. Ted and I started dating. We took it slow because I was taking a lot of singing engagements. So I was surprised to find out I was pregnant. I only slept with Ted once. I lost a baby. I wanted a baby. I decided to have my baby and raise it alone. I hadn't heard from Ted, so I decided to move on. I was visiting a girlfriend, and she wanted to know who the baby's father was. I told her and made her promise not to tell anyone. She told. Ted contacted me. He came to my apartment and asked, "Is it true?" I said yes. Ted said, "Okay, let's take a ride." We got in his car and he drove. Then he said, "I'm going to take you to see a woman. She's a friend and she can pop you." I was confused. What are you talking about? Ted kept his eyes on the road. Get rid of the baby. We can get rid of the baby. The car came to a red light. I opened my door, climbed out the car, and walked home. After that, every time I looked up, Ted was there. He wouldn't say anything. He would just stare at me like a ghost. One evening, I went to a restaurant with another friend. I looked up and Ted was at the bar. That's when I realized he was following me. Eventually, Ted called me and said, "If you're going to have the baby, I'll help. I'll take you to your doctor's appointments." He made good on his word and took me to the appointments. After some time, we became more friendly. Then the day came when Ted took me to meet his parents. Ted's father was really sweet. I liked him instantly. Ted's mother seemed nice, but distant. She said, "Everyone calls me Nana." When Ted left the room, his father pulled close to me and said, "Get as far away from my son as you can. He's nothing but trouble." I'm pregnant. Sadness washed over his face. He looked down and said, "I'm sorry." I could hear Ted coming back to the living room. Ted's father looked at me and said, "I'll help you all I can." When I was 5 months pregnant, Ted committed an armed robbery and was arrested. He jumped bail and fled Pittsburgh. Nana had put their house up to post his bail, and she was going to lose her house if he didn't return. She asked me if I'd heard from him. I told her he's in Chicago, staying with the guy he did time with. Nana said, "The next time he calls, tell him you want to see him. I'll fly you to Chicago. See if you can talk him into coming back. Tell him he has to return. If he doesn't, I'll lose my house." A couple days later, Ted called. He was thrilled to hear that I wanted to see him, so we made plans for him to pick me up at O'Hare Airport. Ted and his friends picked me up, and we drove around like we were on vacation. We ate, went to a movie. Finally, we were alone at his friend's house. I talked to Ted about what was happening at home. He listened, but he didn't say anything. We spent another day together, which ended with Ted driving me to the airport. He pulled to the curb. I turned to him. "You can't let your mother lose her house. What are you going to do? What do you want me to tell Nana?" He remained silent and got out the car. I did the same. I walked with him as he carried my suitcase. "Ted, you can't let your mother lose her house. What are you going to do?" He shook his head. "Oh, no." 3 days later, Ted returned to Pittsburgh and was sent straight to jail. I went into premature labor. With no one to look after me, I ended up in a hospital for unwed mothers run by the Salvation Army. Booth Memorial. I stayed there until I had my baby boy. My baby was born premature, weighing only 3 pounds and 14 ounces. I named him Jason Michael. He was a fighter, and he grew stronger every day. I was so happy when I brought him home. I had my baby to love and love me back. 4 years later, Ted was released from prison. We started seeing each other. He had a job and was trying to go straight. We were married in 1976. Everything went downhill from there. I got pregnant with Justice. Ted beat her out of me. 3 days later, I was alone in the premature care unit. I was holding her, holding Justice, kissing her tiny mouth, and I watched her take her last breath. When her life left, her body became heavier. I kissed Justice once more and turned her over to the medical examiner. I was numb as I walked into the family room. Ted arrived about an hour later. I couldn't stand the sight of him. I screamed, "You killed my baby! You beat her out of me! You are worthless!" He just stood there looking down at the floor. He sat down and tried to cry. Then in walks my mother. The first thing she did was put her arms around Ted. I couldn't stand it. My mother asked, "Can I see the baby?" I stood up and said no. Then I left the room to go look for a phone. I called Ted's father. I told him the baby died. Mr. Duncan hung up. Then he did what he did every evening. Got into his car, pulled it into his driveway, and parked it in the garage. He locked the door, but this time he dropped dead. I had to get Ted out of my life, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. We moved into this little house. I was on edge all the time. Ted was very violent. He would walk in the door, come right at me, and hit me. He and I fought all the time. I called the police every week. I packed all his belongings and sent them to his mother's house. He refused to accept them. So the car service brought them back. I called Ted and told him I dumped his things on the sidewalk. He better hurry before people start picking through his things. When he came to get his things, he knocked on my door. When I opened the door, Ted punched me in the face and broke my nose. Then the harassment started. He broke my windows. So I called the police and pressed charges. I was hoping they would put him back in jail. The day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse. I went to the waiting area. I looked across the room and my mother is sitting with Ted. I couldn't believe this woman. My face is swollen. I had 2 black eyes, and she's sitting with him. I asked, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Ted doesn't have anybody on his side." Then she got up and walked to me with her arms open. I glared at her. "Get away from me. There's really something wrong with you." The court ruled that Ted would have to return to jail to finish his sentence. It never happened. Ted went on the lam. That's when the harassment reached a fever pitch. It went on for weeks. He moved on to harass my friends, making me unwelcome. He broke my windows 3 times. He would come in the middle of the night and pound on the windows and on the front door. I was so jumpy, I sent Jason to my mother's. A few days later, I ran into Percy, an old friend from my childhood. He was very nice, soft-spoken man. He was also a good listener, and I poured out my heart. I explained that I kept calling the police, but that wasn't helping. Percy drove me home, left, then came back later with a gun. Percy and I sat at my kitchen table. He took the clip out the gun and cocked it. Then he handed it to me. I said, I've never held a gun before. Percy took the gun from my hand and said, it's easy. Cock it, aim, and squeeze. He offered the weapon to me. I took it. I looked at it for a moment. Then I sat it on the table and stared at it. Percy and I sat silent for a moment. I palmed the gun, cocked it, aimed, and squeezed the trigger. I looked at Percy and said, I'm gonna kill Ted. I told Percy about my birthday. Ted and I had a terrible fight, and he got the best of me. After beating me down, he raped me. I got a call from the health department. They informed me that Ted reported that I was one of the people he had sexual contact with. They told me I was exposed to gonorrhea and should come in for treatment. A week later, I was sitting at the kitchen table, modifying some jeans. I had the jeans laid out on the table with the scissors. The door opens, and Ted is walking in the house. He got a glass of water and just looked at me. I told him about the call from the health department and that I was treated for gonorrhea. He said, I was treated too. You probably gave it to me. I screamed, get out! Get out! He stared at me. Then he looked at the scissors. He said, I dare you. I lowered my hand holding the scissors. Ted stepped to me and took 2 fingers and poked me in the chest 3 times. He continued to degrade me, and he poked me in the chest. Then he took the same 2 fingers and poked me in my forehead. Rage consumed me. I raised my hand holding them scissors, and I stabbed Ted. I broke the skin. There was a lot of blood. Then he ran upstairs. I grabbed 2 kitchen knives and followed him. He ran into the front bedroom and held the door shut. He said, just let me leave. I stepped back. As he was passing me, he swung at me but lost his balance, and I rammed and started tearing his skin with the knives. He rolled down the bottom of the steps. I followed. Ted was getting on his feet. I said, get out. We walked to the front door. He opened the door and punched me. I was going down on my knees. And then I pulled myself up, and as he turned, I ran and sliced him with the knife one last time. He left me alone for a while after that. Now he's all worked up again. Percy said, if you use the gun, call me immediately. I'll come get it. I sat alone holding the gun. I couldn't believe this was happening. I decided it was going to end. I'm going to kill Ted. I expected him to return that night. And if he did, I was going to kill him. I slept on the floor at the front door and waited. I was going to end this. He didn't keep me waiting long. On the 3rd night around 3 o'clock in the morning, he showed up, pounding on the front window, then the door. The gun was right beside me. I was on my feet with the gun, cocked it, and ripped the door open. He must have heard the gun being cocked because he was running down the street. The street was a cul-de-sac. There's no traffic at that hour. I stood in the middle of the street and took aim and fired. The blast was deafening. The kickback knocked me off my feet. I was laying on my back in the middle of the street. The bullet pinged the building. At the turn of the corner, I got on my feet, raced in the house, and called Percy. He came immediately. Someone called the police because I heard sirens. Flashing lights spun around the corner as Percy was driving by. I explained to the police that I didn't have a gun. It was my husband, Ted Duncan. He's been in trouble for months. There's a warrant out for his arrest. After the police were gone, Ted called screaming, "Where did you get a gun? You tried to kill me." I said, "I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna blow your head off the next time I see you." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I'll leave you alone. I promise." I didn't believe Ted. I prayed. I fasted. I asked Lord Jesus to please take over the fight. Sometime later, I was coming home from shopping in a jitney. The car turned onto the cul-de-sac. We drove past a car I instantly recognized as Lonnie's, a friend of Ted's. Ted was on the passenger side. He's still on the lam. I went into the house and called the police. Ted was picked up that day, booked, and sent away for years. Thanks be to God.